Hi everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create this painting step by step. It's really simple for a beginner. Okay, I'm going to do a nice autumn scene today. I have very quickly drawn out, I've made this up, 3 mountains. You've got this distant mountain first, then this one coming down, then the bigger one coming all the way over. I've put in a rough line of some trees and a little cottage, nice and simple, a rectangle with a roof, a little chimney and a few dashes for windows and doors. Then from the point where you go round the mountain, I've brought a line out and then a line on this side. I'm thinking water, and I popped a couple of little rocks in here. So it's a nice simple beginner's one. I'll talk you through the colours as I go. So I'm using a Saunders Waterford paper, cotton paper, a rough. It's on a block, 9 by 12. So it's going to stay nice and wet. I'm using a wash brush to apply water to the sky. Got round number 10. Just checking that whatever I've got in the brush is coming out. I'm going to load with water. I'm going to dip into some cobalt blue. I'm going to spread that around on the wet paper. Load with water, dip into cobalt blue. So I keep my brush pressed down. It's not so much cloud today, it's more I want a flow of it, the sky coming down softly to the mountains. I've rinsed my brush out, I've dipped it back into the water, and I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of rose madder. And just blend that through. So I'm starting to get a different colour. Pick up a little bit more through at the bottom. It's quite purpley, which is fine. I want that. Rinse my brush again, dab into a bit of water, and pick up a little bit of Payne's Grey. Payne's Grey, I'm going to sweep just along that top. Then I'm just going to lift the pad, let it run a little bit. I've still got my brush here, so I can just manipulate it just to help it run in places. I want a nice, soft, muted sky. Dab my brush off. If it gets to the bottom, I can just lift that paint out of the way. So you see this bit running here? Just a damp brush, fairly clean, can lift it away. So you don't get that horrible line happening there. That's lovely. So I'm going to dry that one off now. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I've got a lovely tonally soft muted sky, which is what I wanted, and I'm going to look to come into the mountains. So as you come into each of these, you're going to build the colour up as they come forward. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is the one in the distance. I'm using my round number 10, wetting the whole of that mountain. I'm then going to drop down to a round number 6, and I'm going to pick up first of all a little bit of the cobalt blue. I'm going to run that along the top edge. So whenever you're doing any sort of distant mountains or trees, it's really useful to know that if you use the colours from the sky, it will make it appear to recede. So we want this one to really set back, so we're going to use the colours of the sky. Rinse my brush out. I'm just going to dab in to a little bit of the rose madder and just bring that through. We're following the line of the land, so as I'm sweeping in, I'm following the line of the land. Rinse that one out. I'm going to dip into the Payne's Grey. Now there's a little bit of water on my brush because I don't want this to be too dark at this stage. This is still nice and wet, and I'm just going to hit places towards the top. I'm not going to do a full line. I'm just hitting places towards the top, and then I'm going to sweep down a couple of times. Take a little bit dark towards that bottom edge if you want to. And then we're just going to keep going through this, and we dry this one off, and then we're going to come back on. Okay, so that's nicely dried. It's really important that you dry these off as you go so you get the edge for the next mountain. And we're just going to work our way down the picture. It's always good when you're a beginner to not flit around too much and to just do it bit by bit. So that's my round number 10 with the water. This time I'm going to take a little bit of raw sienna on. So I'm going to start to warm these mountains up. So we come forward, they're going to get a little bit warmer and a little bit bolder. So that's the raw sienna on. Then a little bit of the cobalt blue. So some of this will mix to a muted green, that's absolutely fine. The blue, where it is on its own, will still help to send this and recede it back. So everything is moving forward, it's warming up. I'm going to take a little bit of the rose madder on, so I've rinsed my brush out. Take a little bit of that through. Again, I'm following the line of the land, and then I'm coming back on with a Payne's Grey. So this time I can afford to be a bit bolder, so I've got less water on my brush. Concentrate on getting a really nice edge in places. I don't want you to do a line all the way down. Little bits following the line of the land. If it sits, then you rinse your brush, you dab it off, so it's basically nearly dry, and you're just going to blend by touching the paint a little bit. It might have dried slightly in places, and then you can blend that through and pull that paint down. With a nearly dry brush you can do a lot. As you can see, that is getting warmer. So I'm going to dry that bit off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. We're going to come over to this side. So this time we're going to wet the mountain, wet around the house, but wet the area where the trees are going to go as well, because we're going to do some trees wet in wet. So I'm using my round number 10 to put the water on. I'm not concerned about the chimney, I can go over that because that's going to be dark anyway. Just make sure you've got plenty of water on so it gives you plenty of time. A nice coat and a good sheen. Doesn't want puddles, but you want a good sheen. Okay, so I'm going to start with the raw sienna again. This is with my round number 6. A smaller brush just pops you in real good control of the paint. You're doing this, and you're just going to follow the line of the land. Make sure you come around the house. Don't be too concerned if it hits the roof. Going to dip into the cobalt blue. So I didn't rinse my brush in between. So there was a little bit of raw sienna on there. So it's a little bit different. Everything that I'm doing is making it a little bit different. Rinse that out. I'm dabbing into the rose madder. Just bring some of that through. Again, following the line of the land. Every time follow the line of the land. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna this time as well. So this is warming it up. giving it more of an autumn feel. And I'm going to dip into the Payne's grey. Nice and dramatic. So there isn't much water on my brush at all. I just want the paint to flow a little bit. And I'm catching that top edge quite a lot because I want this now to start to slightly silhouette. So I can take it all the way along, but I'm not just doing one line. I'm pulling those lines down so you've got the line of the land happening. Make sure you bring some around the cottage as well. You don't want to end up with a halo of light around your cottage. Okay, so I've got a very bright green here, a Viridian green. I'm just showing you how you can use these. You often get these in starter kits and they're very, very bright. If you add burnt sienna to that, you'll get a much more natural green. You just keep going. You'll get a much more natural green. And then with that paint, I'm going to start to come on, create some little trees. So I'm dipping, dabbing with my round, number 6. The Viridian pigment is made with phthalo blue, so it's quite a shooty pigment, so you'll see it's shooting forwards. And shooting upwards. You will just want a variety of heights. I'm thinking these are evergreens. It's now not too wet, so it's staying put quite nicely. If you come on and it shoots a lot, you just wait. You wait for that paint just to dry a little bit, and then you'll be able to come on and get these lovely soft effects. Now if I rinse my brush, I've left a little bit of a gap here. I'm going to dip into some burnt sienna and pop in a tree in burnt sienna just in front of it. Because it's autumn, I'm going to pop a little bit burnt sienna in here, so you're going to get that autumn feel by adding in a couple of extra autumnal trees. So just a few dabs. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off now. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I'm just going to dip into a little bit of the Payne's grey. And this is on to dry now. I'm going to paint the roof. So I'm using a round number 6. You use whichever brush you're most comfortable with. You can go down to a number 2 if you think, oh, this is tricky. With a brush with a good point, you should be able to do most of it quite easily. Then I'm going to come down, I'm going to dab, longer dab for the door, 2 shorter dabs for those windows. And then just wait in a minute. So what I want to do now is lift a little bit of light out of the roof. I've just got to wait for it to settle a bit and dry enough so that when I lift the light, it stays put. So what I've got here is a clean, dry brush. I'm trying to hit the top edge of the roof whilst it's still damp and lift some of the paint out. So you're getting a dark edge and a light edge. It's a nice simple way to lift out the light. If you just pull this up a little bit as well, you can have a little chimney stack on top of the chimney. Okay, so I'm going to start to work into this side Now, so if I take a little bit of water on, this is with my round number 10, and a dab of raw sienna. So we're saying that these are grassy banks, and then this is a stream or a river coming through. This bit here, I'm going to take the raw sienna on to dry. So I want it to be bolder, so I've took that on to wet, this on to dry to give it a stronger feel up front. Then I'm going to use some of this green that we made up earlier and just stroke some of that through. You see with this bit I've just left little bits of the raw sienna showing. It's really helpful to do that. Just gives a natural shadow to everything. So just that boldness of the raw sienna is making that stand forward. Then this side, I'm just going to wet this side. A little bit of water with my round number 10, dab my round number 10 into the water, then straight into the raw sienna that's neat. Just bring that over. Dab in, bring that over. So I'm just flowing the brush across horizontally. If I dab into the raw sienna with less water on my brush now, I can bring this stronger into that front section. So I'm doing the same thing again. If I come into that green, just bring a bit of that through. That sort of horizontal stroke now will make this feel a lot flatter. So it's really useful to try and keep that stroke. Bring this along the edge. If I pick up my round number 6 and just get a tiny bit of Payne's grey, I'm just going to drop a few little bits just on the edge. So here it's still damp and this side it's still wet. So this is just going to give a little bit of darkness on the bank. It's going to help to define that edge. So I'm just very lightly catching the edge. I want you to vary the pressure of the brush so that you end up with a varied line. It's going to soften in a little bit upwards, but you want a varied line. You don't want it to be one straight pressured line. If you hardly touch in places and press down in other places, you get a varied line with a pointy brush. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. I've picked up a 1 centimetre flat, any flat will do, and I'm just taking some of that blue into a bit of water. So I want a slightly lighter mix because I'm going to come on to dry now. So that was 2 dips of water and a tiny bit of paint in there. So I've got just a milky consistency. It's not creamy, it's not thick, it's just enough. So what I'm going to do now is come down and use the rough of the paper to start to create light. So this is on to dry, and I'm sweeping down and I'm missing bits on purpose. So I'm not loading the brush up and keep going over. I've started at the top, I'm working this way. And I'm flowing the water down because I want it to feel quite flowy. There's a little bit of a horizontal stroke coming through just to break up that flow a little bit. But I want you to miss bits. It's really important you miss bits so that you get that sense of water and sparkling water and flowing water. Just coming around these two rocks here. And it's as simple as that. If I dry that off, I can put a little bit of more detail in. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. What I'm going to do first of all is dip this 1 centimetre flat into Payne's Grey. So I've loaded the brush with water, I'm dipping into the neat Payne's Grey. And I'm going to pop in these rocks. So arching upwards with the brush, coming down, and then doing the bottom of the rock. So I've got those 2 rocks in there. If I dip the brush into a bit of water, I don't want this to be too strong, so I'm dipping twice with what I've got on the brush. And I'm just letting those rocks settle a minute. And I'm just going to come in with a horizontal stroke and just touch the paper. So the brush is horizontal. I am moving up and down when I'm touching the paper. So it's a really nice way to get a few ripples into the water. Ripples and shadow. Keep your brush horizontal, just wiggle. You just get a little bit of shadow breaking through. I'm avoiding these rocks, just letting them settle a minute. Okay, what I've got here is a little bit of plastic bank card that's been chopped up, so it's just less than 1 centimetre. This is fantastic for rocks because you can use the flat of the surface to scrape and the corner of surface to indent. So if I come in and press like I'm drawing, I'll get an indent in each of these. And if I scrape, I get a rock-like texture because I'm scraping the paint away. So use the flat and scrape. And it's as simple as that to get a rock. If I come into the thicker Payne's Grey and just pop a little bit just underneath, like that, it'll bring those rocks to be connected within the water. Okay, I'll dry that off and pop a mount on. And there we go, it's all finished. So it's a really simple and effective painting for an absolute beginner to have a go at. You've got the graded sky with that sort of drop, like a misty feel to it. The receding mountains, so it's showing you how they can recede by just changing the dilution of the colour and the colours used to warm up as you come forward. There's some little wetting for the trees here, and then the same with the dilution of colour and boldness to bring the foreground forwards. A technique wet on dry to show you how to do water, the rock scratching technique, and the lifting out for the little cottage. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to have another go at something else, I'll pop a video here for you, and I'll see you next time.